Okay, thanks for joining us again, folks, on a Family Through Service of V2VG podcast, video podcast. This is our second video for ODNEC. Opportunity does not equal consent, right, Chuck?
That's true. Episode number 2. We had to skip a couple weeks because Jami was sick one time, and then we had some other stuff going on. But we do have Jami back on the horn with us. Eventually, you will see and we will be gracious enough to see her beautiful face. But today, it's just the vocals of Miss Jami. So please say hello.
Hey, everybody.
All right, Jami, what do we want to talk about today?
Let's talk about how to navigate your world when you have an anxiety or a fear that you're going to encounter a male, if that was who caused your trauma, and how to overcome the fact that there isn't a threat anymore, an actual threat, but your brain perceives one, and how just to conduct yourself, how you can find comfort and still be, productive.
Right.
So this is not like as broad as every day, like you go to the supermarket and there's a male taking your order at the deli. It's a little bit more
like
specific.
contact.
Yeah, like so, say women have to do their annual OBGYN
Yeah.
and
Their women's health doctor's visit. Yeah, that was a big one for me.
and which is interesting in a lot of cases. Most women are typically okay under those circumstances,
Right.
but and we're assuming that the perpetrator of the military sexual trauma is male, which is probably something of 98% or so.
Right.
Is the
Speaking
truth.
from the perspective of a female victim and a male
Yeah.
perpetrator.
Right.
So, what type of experiences did you go through, and how are you able to deal with them when it came to like the OBGYN or your basic physical?
Yeah, to overcome those type of triggers.
First, acknowledging that that you have a trigger and not putting yourself in a situation where you have to manage on the spot. Just tell yourself this is what I have a hard time with. Advocate for yourself and say, speak for yourself. Like,
Yeah.
I would prefer a woman practitioner. They don't have a right to ask you why, because
Yeah.
when you are seeking,
Yeah.
whether it be preventative care or acute care, whatever you want to call it, you have a right, no matter whom you are, to ask for what makes you comfortable.
Sure.
But when you have experienced military sexual trauma, it is of the utmost importance, because you're still, whether it's spoken or not, whether you're open about it or not, you don't want to cause yourself any more suffering or any more anxiety or any more shame, by forcing yourself to do something that your brain tells you is not okay, because it makes you fearful. You won't talk about the concerns you have. It shuts you down when you feel like you don't have a choice. So first you tell yourself, I have a choice, and say what you'd like.
Right.
You don't have to tell them why. They don't have a right to know why. You're not obligated to tell them why. But, if they don't have one, then you say, I'd like to reschedule when there is.
Right.
Yeah,
So
so
it's a cascading
matter-
effect, right? So
Yeah,
it can
it's a
start with
matter
something
of-
small and then get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right,
So
because you could make things worse for yourself. You
Yeah.
might be so fearful, you're less likely to seek help if you need it, whether, for whatever reason.
And the thing too is being proactive beforehand also kind of clears the air, because in a situation, I mean, just from my own PTSD, if you do not prepare yourself and don't make these things known, and you do get examined by a man, and you have a mental break or an anxiety attack or whatnot,
Or the inability to separate your trauma from reality, and
Yeah.
you go into a situation and, by all intents and purposes is completely, innocent situation, and your brain is telling you you're being assaulted again.
yeah,
You want You don't want to do that to yourself, even if you're too scared to ask. Have somebody go with you and have them ask for you.
Well, if you don't ask the question, the answer is always no.
And it's important
Right.
too, because you're also putting yourself in a position, if you don't do this a little bit ahead of time,
Right.
when you have this breakdown, the doctor's office might refuse medical attention to you in the future,
based on
and then
your behavior.
maybe you have to drive another 45 minutes to find another decent OBGYN or whatever the case is.
Right,
So
right.
it's twofold: it's protecting yourself from yourself and protecting them from yourself as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I mean, when you've been through something traumatic, your behavior is going to be different
Sure.
on a day-to-day basis. And what other people perceive as strange behavior or questionable behavior could make them make a choice for you or treat you differently. And the only thing that I can recommend is, if you know you have an appointment and you can plan to prepare yourself, okay, this is what I need to have do. These are my questions. Have I let them know I would like said doctor?
Right.
Try to prepare yourself on your own and find if you have them a coping skill to calm yourself so that you can focus on what you need and just plan ahead. If you know having a male practitioner is not going to happen and not going to work for you, speak up.
Yeah.
I mean, as hard as it might be, and you might feel like you're being judged, I'd rather be judged for being too picky than to put myself in a situation where I didn't speak up, and then you have more anxiety, more trauma to the trauma, because you just didn't think you had a right to choose, and you always have a right to choose.
And you brought up another great point too, is having an advocate with you, say a sister or a mother, or just a female friend. This is basically a little bit of a segue into one of our next episodes, but we recently encountered a situation where one of our clients has reached out to us, and she's worked with you as well, Jamie, a little bit, and has asked us to be an advocate because she felt she was being bullied in a professional atmosphere. So won't get into too much of that, but it's really important to know your limits. If you're not able to
know your limits, and know what your fears are, because sometimes, unfortunately, you are all alone. So you have to really fight for yourself. But if you're lucky enough or fortunate enough to have someone that you have confided in who can help you navigate these things so that you can learn to trust yourself in knowing that you're making the decision that's best for you and your continued, health care, mental health care. There's no shame in going, you know what, I just can't do this on my own. It doesn't matter why, but if that person is a friend, a good friend, a family member, a complete stranger that you've got, that you know and that you're comfortable with, it does help, because sometimes you're either too tired mentally, you're too afraid, or, you just need that comfort. And that sense of safety and security that another person can bring you, then by all means, because, what are they going to do? Tell you no? Tell them no.
If they do, then you go somewhere else, right? So you are a firm believer in advocating for yourself, and or getting an advocate that can help you out when you are either unable to advocate for yourself, or if they're not accepting you advocating for yourself. Have a, in the Army they call it a battle buddy. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
And the battle doesn't end after MST. The battle is never over.
Right.
I am many years. My trauma was in 2000.
Right.
So I am many years from that moment. But it is still a battle. It is still a challenge, and I still fight. But I have the fortunate situation of being extremely headstrong, and I don't take no. I'm not a quitter, so don't tell me no, because if I know what it is that I need for myself, and you tell me no, I'll either go somewhere else or I'll force your hand. I mean, all within, acceptable means, but you really have to put yourself in a position to go that I'm important. This is what I need, and you need to find ways to get it.
I think in these situations, and I don't know if you agree with me, Chuck, let me know, that in a situation regarding military sexual trauma, I would say it's absolutely appropriate to jump the chain of command to get results.
100%.
No, absolutely,
100%.
yeah. And
I mean, I have experience with that as well, because if you're not, if you're not getting what you need from, your next going up the ladder, and you feel it's a matter of personal safety or mental health, you very well can just hey, I need to go here. Just with all due respect, you're not helping me, and I need to speak to somebody else.
And so we put the closest thing to an extreme out there in the situation of someone who is going to be in the most intimate aspect of your daily life, with a doctor seeing you naked, having to examine you. But there's another situation we come in contact with recently, and it just goes to affirm your point of don't ever just accept what is being given to you. We have a veteran who suffers from military sexual trauma, who's trying to go through a divorce, and the divorce lawyer she reached out to assigned her a paralegal who lost his bar, and when she did some research, found out he lost his bar because of sexual harassment with other divorcee clients. That is one of those things that, no, they're not going to see you naked. No, they're not going to have any intimate aspect of what happens in a doctor's office. But it's still one of those things you most certainly don't have to accept that as the one and only call.
Right, and once you know somebody has had inappropriate behavior, then absolutely you don't have to accept that, because just because they might not, do something to you doesn't mean they don't have their mindset there, and they're not going to have your best interest at heart, because they don't value your position. And
they've proven it by their track record, as it were.
Not only that, outside of being sexually assaulted, what is more vulnerable than a woman trying to go through divorce? Their whole world is being, but so I guess we kind of have a couple different ends of what could happen. So I was wondering, Jami, as far as everyday life, can you talk about some of the things that were difficult as far as getting back in the dating game and things of that nature?
Well, first you have to kind of evaluate how your behavior was after your trauma, because a lot of females, I don't know the percentage, and I'm only speaking from experience, that there's a lot of promiscuity that happens after the fact, because at that point someone has shown you that you don't have a value, you don't have a say, so it doesn't matter, do what you want to do. It's not like you're being considered anything more than the moment. So there can be a lot of promiscuity, which blurs your ability to see value in yourself. I'd say you choose dysfunctional relationships. You unfortunately, because you haven't had experiences that are positive, you honestly just don't choose right for yourself. And there are instances where it goes beautifully, but I think that military sexual trauma sets females up to fail, because that's a dysfunctional situation. And now how do you pick something healthy if you have no experience with that?
We've seen that lead directly to domestic abuse situations as well.
Specifically,
and it's like a subconscious thing, because it's not like there's a woman out there who's like, hey, how can I fuck up my life more?
Right.
It's just kind of like your brain is on autopilot, like fight or flight. You shut down the parts of you that acknowledge what's happened or that it bothers you, because I think even when you choose unhealthy situations or toxic relationships, you don't necessarily intend to do it. You
Right,
just
exactly.
kind of do because your brain is on autopilot. You haven't acknowledged that you don't deserve that.
Well, I'm
You know,
assuming
because
it's like they don't value you, so why should you value yourself?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, because
It's a shame.
you don't have any self-worth.
Yeah.
You've been broken all the way down, you know, and you know, admitting that you deserve better doesn't come till later, you know, especially if you're not getting any kind of counseling or therapy of any kind. You
Yeah.
don't know how to identify a situation as toxic until it's too late.
So speaking of that, what would you recommend somebody who's a victim of military sexual trauma? What do you recommend their first steps to take to become a survivor of military sexual trauma? To turn that corner to heal?
Well, and like all of it is easier said than done. So
Sure.
with respect to the situation the person has been in, you really have to tell yourself, I didn't ask for this.
Right.
I did not okay this. And it doesn't matter if you okayed things in the beginning and changed your mind. You have to find your I didn't do this, or don't blame yourself. And it's really hard. It's easier said than done, believe me, I know. But ultimately, there has to be that moment that you go, no, I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for everything that comes along with it, even after it's done.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to talk to somebody. And that can take a long time, too, because I didn't talk to somebody. Oh gosh, it was almost 10 years before I spoke to somebody about even counseling or that there were resources for me.
Yeah.
I didn't even tell the one person I was closest to the entire time I was in Germany, and I told her years after the fact, and she was dumbfounded. When we were like connected at the brain, we were always together. We had the same room in the barracks. We worked in the same office. We did everything together. And I didn't tell her until we had been out of the military probably 10 years or more.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, no matter how long it takes, the first step is going, yeah, you know what, this is not on me. You know, and then trying to rebuild some kind of self-worth.
Yeah,
And
rebuild
trying
that
to
value that
find
you were.
ways-
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of like
Yeah.
trying to purge yourself of that feeling of shame and that this is my fault, you know, which happens with any kind of sexual trauma. But, you know, you have to be able to go, no, this isn't my fault, and really start seeking out ways to make yourself feel better about yourself, and finding that strength that you matter, that, you know, you don't deserve to have continued unhealthy relationships or making poor decisions, you know, things like that.
No, definitely, and I know we're getting real close on time, so I wanted to. You shared a very personal and touching story with Eric and I a while back when we first found out your situation, and if you're comfortable enough, I'd like you to share a little bit, so that way we can have again another segue for one of the next episodes we do. But this is very telling, and it goes along with everything we've talked about today, but a little bit more specifically about triggers.
Okay. For me personally, confinement, the fact that I had no control over the situation, no control over what was actually happening. And a lot of victims will say that they had an out-of-body experience. And to me, that's how it felt. I felt like I was watching this happen, and I was not in any way, shape, or form in control of anything at all. You know, and lack of control is a trigger. If I feel like I have no control in a situation, that's a trigger still to this day. You know, as a parent, you don't have control of a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And that triggers me.
Yeah.
In my relationship, I'm very fortunate, on a positive note, to have a partner who knows what happened and who is supportive of making sure that every moment of everything going on in our relationship, the whole gamut, talking, intimacy, everything, that I have an element of control, or he makes sure that I'm okay.
Yeah.
So that we could develop healthy, and he doesn't trigger me.
Yeah, yeah.
But, being in a situation like in public, if I'm at a store and there's a lot of people and they're being loud and I feel like I can't get away from it, even though it has nothing to do with me, that's a trigger.
Yeah.
Being in a room with too many people and I'm not near the way to get out, that's a trigger. The loss of control is huge for me. And it's still yesterday was, every day is a struggle when it comes to that. Triggers don't necessarily go away. But yeah, loss of control is a trigger for me. Confinement is a trigger. For a long time, the appearance of the person who did this to me affected how I would just get disgusted. And it would make me agitated because the way his appearance, and if I would see somebody with similar features, it was a trigger.
Yeah.
I don't have that problem now, but you work through some, and they are better, and then you have others that may never go away. So.
No, yeah, definitely. But there was a situation that you told us about with you and your husband before you moved out here, specifically involving people in uniform, and you had a really bad physical.
Oh, yeah. Where we lived, there's one specific. It's the police, the Los Angeles Police Department in an area. They're all the same department but different part of the city, and they profiled me based on the kind of car I drove and the fact that I have a lot of tattoos. So and then when I've got pulled over 3 times in the space of less than 60 days by the same department, and I was detained, and and then that did. It went fine, but then they don't want to hear it, and I'm trying to try to stay calm, but. And then on our trip here, we drove from California to here. We're in Utah, terrible place, and they accused us of shoplifting at the Walmart, corralled us into a very small room, and that was it. I was triggered because I was cornered, and they were being aggressive, and they were not listening. And of course, your brain shuts down, and immediately it's a fight or flight response. And I got loud, and they perceived it as aggressive, although I had not physically threatened anybody.
Right.
I was snatched up, cuffed, and taken outside. At this point, I was not able to stay calm. I'm trying to tell them and be as respectful as possible. Wasn't happening, and male police officer chose to check for weapons or whatever, and I'm not even sure that he should have been doing that. And when he did, it immediately sent me into that moment when I was, when I experienced my trauma, and I lost, I wet my pants, which is even more demeaning as an adult, to be put in that kind of situation where they're not listening, they're being extremely aggressive, they're being, they're hurting you, and then to have absolute loss of a bodily function because of the fear you are in that moment, because you are literally reliving what had happened. Yeah. And after all said and done, they don't even apologize, and they bring up that you're a veteran, and thank you for your service, and you're like, what the hell is, what?
You can't go buy me a pair of pants, or at the least,
oh my God, it was a mess. And thinking back, I probably could have done something legally, but then I would have to have relived the situation again, and most people would choose not to, so they don't do anything.
And that's the scary part, right?
Right. And the whole time, my fiance is telling them, please, she's a veteran, she has PTSD, please, she's not, whatever. And he was just begging and pleading with them to please try to understand. If this had been, a man, I couldn't even imagine, but they didn't listen. They did not want to hear it. And I think that no matter what happens, a veteran with PTSD should never be treated that way, but to have a male police officer who is huge in comparison to who you are physically. And, you know, to do what he did, it just, my whole body shut down. My brain shut down. I lost it, you know, but there was nothing I could do, so.
And, you know, especially over the circumstances over shoplifting when...
Which was on camera, and we didn't have that problem. My fiance had to go to court through this. They had video, and, I mean, all in all, there was no reason for that to have happened.
Yeah, it's not like a violent crime. And not only that, but you look out in California, you can steal up to $900 and it's not a felony now, and all this other craziness.
Well, we were in a place where being judged is part of the culture, especially in the specific location.
Yeah, no, understandable. And you had California plates and all that, but...
Well, I want to point out something.
And, you know, it was Walmart. It was really late. We were stressed out. We had already been stuck in Utah for 2 days, going on the third day.
Yeah.
No, and we were. It was like a no-win situation. Like, are you serious? And it was one of those situations. Now, every time I see a police, now not here in Vermont. I mean, they're great, but anytime I see like a cop car coming near me, you know, my heart starts beating really fast because of the experiences I've been through. It's
no, indeed.
It's
Well,
insane.
I do want to point out something for, especially for military sexual trauma survivors or people with PTSD. If you're in a situation like that or any similar situation, and you do lose control, and especially if you lose control of a bodily function or whatever, please don't be ashamed of yourself, because that's why it's called losing control.
Yeah.
It's not like you did it on purpose. That's the whole point of losing control. That's what a trigger really is. I know the word trigger is bandied about nowadays like it's candy. But a real honest-to-God trigger, honestly and legitimate trigger, means that you have no control of the XYZ action, of your reaction. Yeah. So if you're listening to this or you're watching this and it's happened to you, please understand it's not your fault. Don't be embarrassed. And if it happens in the future, this is a natural, albeit unfortunate, response to a trauma. So
and no matter how far away it's been, your brain remembers it like it just happened.
Right.
You know, so
it's important to remember that the honest triggers and the reactions to them are not your fault. Just like the situation that caused these triggers to be triggers.
Yeah.
Are situations outside of your control.
So we have two things to consider for our next episode. One, being advocates and asking for help, and two, diving a little bit more in depth in triggers, where I think you and I can actually add a little bit more texture, because we have issues that have triggers. Not the same, but at least there's some similarity.
Yeah. So there's two things on the plate.
Trigger, excuse me. The basis for a trigger is it's the same for anybody. What it is different, but the physiological and biological reaction to a trigger, it is the same.
Yeah.
Something triggers you, and your body and your brain, they react in a certain way, and it's a way to protect themselves. It's a reaction, you know. It's a fight or flight type situation,
and that's the key, right? It's a reaction, not an action.
Yes.
So you're not fully responsible for a reaction, because you're not giving it premeditated thought.
No, absolutely.
It's like grabbing a combat veteran from behind and spinning him around and expecting everything to go well. It just doesn't turn out right.
Or loud noises.
Right.
Or, you know, I mean,
who knows?
It's a kind of
could be a lot of things.
Yeah, we'll get into some specifics and specific situations in one of the next episodes. Really great having you, Jami. I can't wait to actually get you in the office to be able to participate.
Maybe gas prices will come down soon.
Yeah, maybe. That's a trigger. You know,
going to the gas pump is like son of a
oh my gosh,
son of a bitch.
I'm ready for a horse and buggy.
Right.
the Amish don't look so silly now. Click clackety.
I'm gonna be there in a month. I'm gonna ride my bike. I'll be there in about a month.
Okay, just in time. All right, awesome.
All right, we'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.